Let me keep it simple for you. My grandpa risked his life to fight against you shit-stirring, bloodthirsty commie scums. In fact, he even killed a handful of you in battle. What grandpa did, grandson will happily emulate if he sees the rise of red imperialists in this land again. Okay, first and foremost, where's the evidence that I'm a commie? Okay, where's the evidence? You know, calling me a commie would be an insult to real communists, you know, because first of all, I don't have the discipline to struggle in the jungle for my beliefs. Second of all, I don't think I know enough about Marxism or Leninism to call myself a real commie. And third of all, commie is basically an ad hominem attack in Malaysia. Even Lim Guan Eng gets called a commie, even though Lim Guan Eng is quite palpably a social democrat. But it's rich that he should accuse me of being a shit stirrer when he was quite literally a while ago race baiting. You know, he accuses me of shit stirring, but he was race baiting just a while back, wasn't he?
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome back to the cruel, callous, and heartless capitalist dictatorship of Kuala Lumpur. Today is going to be another jog and talk video because I only have so many hours in a day and I thought I'd kill two birds with one stone. You know, before my weights, I like to do 30 minutes of cardio. Yes, car park running. So today's going to be a jog and talk video. You ready? Let's go! So recently I got into an online scuffle with another victim of communism, a Malaysian reactionary whose grandfather apparently fought the communists in the jungle. And apparently commie scum like me need to be eradicated completely. That's why he's apparently continuing his grandfather's fight. Now, as I've said, I'm not a communist. I don't have the discipline to struggle in the jungle for my beliefs. I am not funded by the Communist Party of China or the Communist Party of Russia. Look at me, I'm so poor I can't even afford a shirt. But anyway, you know how funny it is how reactionary fascists in Asia like to mimic right-wing Westerners whenever they talk. Yeah, it's almost like they're carbon copies of right-wing Westerners. So anyway, I'm going to go through the conversation with this guy, and I'm going to add my analysis to this conversation. And considering this fellow is an account of less than 100 followers, I don't intend to spend too much time actually struggle sessioning him. But in any case, it is my duty and obligation as a socialist to educate class enemies. So let's go.
So it all started with the news of the 4 Malaysian students who were admitted to Harvard College. And, you know, basically this fellow, Dizzy R, I'm not sure whether he's Chinese or Indian, but I think he's Indian because he's used the Tamil word benchot to insult people before. Okay, well, he goes, "Congratulations, make us minorities proud. We focus on hard work and dedication, not non-issues such as socks and shoes design. This is the outcome." Okay, for those of you outside Malaysia, this is basically a reference to the recent case when the word Allah appeared on a pair of socks in KK Mart, and many people in this country were outraged. But that's really another topic for another day. But as you know, Malaysia is a Muslim majority country, so not surprising that many people would be outraged. But basically, I don't know why he had to just focus on race instead of just congratulating these 4 students. So I say, this is such an arrogant take. So 4 outstanding students of ours happened to get into Harvard University. 4 of them happen to be of ethnic minority background. Is there a need to attack the Malays? What has the average Malay working class person done to you exactly? So I criticized him. Then he says, Not an attack on the average Malay, unless you're saying those who firebombed the 3 outlets were from the average Malay working class. No, that is not what I said. He is backpedaling. Now he's trying to backpedal and say, oh, no, I'm not attacking the average Malay. I'm just saying that we minorities focus on the right priorities and work hard, unlike some people in this country. But no, I'm not a racist. I'm only stating facts. You see how he's cowardly backpedaling in this case, in such a cowardly manner? On the same note, what has the average American working class done to you exactly? I see you proudly proclaim yourself as anti-American. And I say, let's revisit your statement. We minorities focus on hard work and dedication. Can we not also say the same of many Malays who are also kind and hardworking people? You specified minorities as having this quality. So what I'm saying is that yes, crazy fascist bigots do exist in the Malay community, but to pigeonhole all Malays into that same category and to say they're nothing but useless, lazy, degenerate fascists is racism. It makes you no better than any ethno-nationalist in this country. I'm sorry. So I say, and of course, I said America the country, not American the people. Hate the country, love the people. So this clown can dish out his anti-American rhetoric, putting 280 million people in one basket because of semantics, but suddenly turns into a white knight to harvest likes from his followers. Yeah, eat my ass, commie scum. Your kind killed thousands of the Malays you pretend to defend. For the umpteenth time, I am not a communist. I don't subscribe to the Marxist worldview. I am a Confucian socialist. Learn to read. And I say, I never virtue signal about how we minorities are better than the majority, as you seemed to be insinuating here. I don't know why you couldn't just be happy for those 4 students and just had to bring race into it. Then he goes apeshit and gets really angry. Education is very much about race in this country, you ignorant, dumb fuck idealist. When the cards are stacked against a group via quotas, budget, infrastructure, discrimination, it will always be about race when one achieves something against the odds. Except that these 4 Harvard kids are not average working class Malaysian, Chinese, or Indians. These are privileged children from well-to-do families. If your parents can afford to send you to Harvard, you have cables that even the average Malay, working class Malay does not have. And we can get into Bumiputra politics and race-based politics and affirmative action, but I've already covered that in my previous videos. And like I've said, it was meant to address the disparities in the post-colonial era, because at that time the Malays were really living below the poverty line. They were the poorest of all the races. So it was a misguided policy. Yes, it created a class of bourgeois Malays who then circulate the wealth and privileges among themselves and take advantage of affirmative action even if they don't have to. And yes, it has hurt poor and working class Chinese and Indians. No one is denying that. But there's no need to sort of like talk as if the 4 Harvard students have somehow triumphed over race-based politics. These are privileged children. And I'm not saying that they are bad people. I'm just saying that they enjoy higher privileges not only above the average Chinese or Indian in this country, but also above the average Malay in this country who will not see the same kinds of opportunities as they have because of their family background. So it's not really a good sample to show that minorities have persevered over the majority when you pick the most privileged group of people. Okay, let's put it this way. Let's say we pick an African American cohort who have done well and been admitted to Harvard but this African American cohort come from bourgeois families in America. Let's say they are rich people's children. And then we say, oh, this is proof that minorities have triumphed over the white majority. No, 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 no. They are more privileged than a white person from a poor family, in the sense that they, despite the fact that poor African Americans face structural issues, these people's proximity to capital protects them. So they're not how do we say, a good representative of the minority triumphing over the majority. You see what I mean? I don't know if I'm clear enough in my my analogy, but you get what I mean. So I say, suppose there were one Chinese, one Indian, and one Malay, what would your response be? Ah, so you saw there were no Malays in this cohort, and so you were delighted at the chance to virtue signal about minority greatness. And frankly, this isn't helping to improve Malaysia. Race baiting is not helping to improve Malaysia. Whataboutism is the weakest form of argument. Yes, indeed, I am delighted that they persevered against state-sanctioned discrimination in education and came out triumphant. Continue eating my ass, commie scum. Like I said, this is not a good sample to prove that minorities have triumphed against the odds, because these people are basically children of the elites of our country. And no, I'm not saying this to insult them. I'm saying that they are not in the same boat as a minority from a poor or a working class family. It simply isn't the case. It's not a good sample. Let me keep it simple for you. My grandpa risked his life to fight against you shit-stirring, bloodthirsty commie scums. In fact, he even killed a handful of you in battle. What grandpa did, grandson will happily emulate if he sees the rise of red imperialists in this land again. Okay, first and foremost, where's the evidence that I'm a commie? Okay, where's the evidence? You know, calling me a commie would be an insult to real communists, you know, because first of all, I don't have the discipline to struggle in the jungle for my beliefs. Second of all, I don't think I know enough about Marxism or Leninism to call myself a real commie. And third of all, commie is basically an ad hominem attack in Malaysia. Even Lim Guan Eng gets called a commie, even though Lim Guan Eng is quite palpably a social democrat. But it's rich that he should accuse me of being a shit stirrer when he was quite literally a while ago race baiting. You know, he accuses me of shit stirring, but he was race baiting just a while back, wasn't he? So you know, in my culture, they say that when you point one finger at someone, three point back at you. Yeah, so every accusation is a confession. When he accuses me of shit stirring, just look at his track record. But yeah, this is what you would call another victim of communism. Yeah, red imperialists. That's an interesting way to term commies. So I say, sir, I'm not a commie. I don't have the discipline to struggle in the jungle for my beliefs. I'm just an abeng with a camera phone. Oh, abeng means chav, you know, the Malaysian Chinese chav. I'm not Chin Peng's grandson. How could I be related to such a handsome man? Save your YouTube channel for someone who cares. Chin Peng, the only person's grave I would happily piss on. I see the resemblance in both your fugly faces though. Well, I never said I was handsome, and you picked Chin Peng at the time when he was almost 90 years old, okay? And the reason his teeth are like that is because he spent years in the jungle, okay? He wasn't some privileged, pampered piece of shit like you who hides in an office while talking big, you know. He actually, regardless of what you think about Chin Peng, he actually had the backbone to actually stand up and fight for his ideals. So anyway, this unhinged right-winger has been stalking me for weeks, and recently he made another snide comment on one of my posts. He said, ever noticed that the most eager socialists and commies are those that tried but did not and could not make it in life? You don't see successful people being this way. The leader of our Socialist Party of Malaysia, Dizzy, is Dr. Jayakumar, who is a very successful medical doctor. Dr. Jayakumar by no means comes from a poor family, and by no means does he count as one you would call a failure in life, but he fights for the working class, he fights for the people. I don't know why, these right-wing reactionaries all assume that people who are socialists must be people who are resentful against rich people. They have this individualistic mentality that the only reason you would be a socialist is because you want something. Well, I'm actually pretty comfortable under capitalism, but I want other people's children to have the same rights as my children and have the same advantages as my children. That's what being a socialist is. And while at least I commend him for finally acknowledging that, yes, I'm a socialist, not a commie, just because I think that every worker deserves a civilized standard of living doesn't make me a resentful and bitter person. They failed now. B40s and M40s means the people on welfare. This is basically the Malaysian equivalent of the Reaganite in America saying, those lazy damn fucking welfare queens. They failed now, so now they want intervention to make up for their failures. Man. It's funny how the liberal reactionaries in Malaysia, the sort of people who fetishize the Singapore model and don't really want to do away with oppression. They just want oppression not to be race-based, but class-based. And basically, these are basically white-collar people who want a hierarchical and oppressive society where they are at the top bullying everyone else at the bottom. Not based on race, but their class position. Well, these people like to talk using right-wing American vernacular, even though, right-wing Western people obviously view Asians as lower than shit. These people are basically carbon copies of right-wing American Westerners. So what I find really interesting about these liberal commentators is that they always seem very, very allergic to class analysis. So, for instance, they will say that the Chinese and Indians in Malaysia are being oppressed by Bumiputra politics. Okay, there's a grain of truth in that. But at the same time, these people never, for one, talk about the Malays who have fallen through the cracks of Bumiputra politics, which have failed the poor, downtrodden Malays, because to these people, if you're Malay and you're poor, that just means you're a lazy, useless degenerate. That's the typical Malaysian liberal analysis. Fundamentally, it is contemptuous of poor people. It's a very white-collar, elitist kind of analysis. Second of all, very much like bourgeois feminism, do you notice that these people never talk about the plight of working-class Chinese and Indian Malaysians who are struggling to make a living? Notice how he was quick to jump up and say, "Ha, you see, Malays, we minorities can succeed because we are the ones in this country who are, working hard, unlike you people who only focus on extremism or things like that." Well, the thing is, this fellow, basically was doing nothing but race baiting. He was only race baiting, and even worse, he picked on 4 of the most privileged members of the minority races. Because this is not to say that people in
Harvard don't work hard. They most certainly worked hard to get into Harvard. But this guy was picking a sample of 4 of the most privileged Chinese and Indian Malaysians to prove that, minorities were superior to the Malays. And the fact of the matter is that if the dynamics were different, if let's say there was 1 Malay, 1 Chinese and 2 Indians, well, because that 1 Malay in that group, in that cohort, would shut this guy up. This guy would keep his mouth shut. But because of the racial dynamics, because he wants to prove that minorities are indeed superior to the Malays, and let's be honest, it's not just Bumiputra politics or race-based politics that makes some Indian and Chinese Malaysians feel superior to the Malays. He says that his grandfather was a soldier in the British Army, right? So, in other words, his grandfather was part of the colonial industrial complex. So, if you know your history, in colonial times, the Malays really were regarded by the Brits as the lowest of the totem pole because they didn't expand European capital. They didn't work in the tin mines or the rubber plantations. So there is still, let's be honest, there is still a colonial superiority complex by some model minorities who still regard themselves as superior to the Malays. And you could see he was trying to flex the superiority of the minorities to the Malays. Now the thing is, I don't know whether he's Chinese or Indian, but I recall there was an Indian-Malaysian chap on the Malaysian Heritage and History Forum, which is basically a reactionary forum that blocks everything that's progressive from passing through its filters, who was actually basically saying something along the same line. So I wonder if this dizzy fella is the same guy from that forum. But what I do know is that people who focus on race as the primary contradiction very rarely, if ever, think about the plight of poor or working class people of the races they purport to defend. It's just the same with how those people who always claim to be defending Malay dignity, they never talk about the plight of poor Malays. They never try to instill socialism in the people. So race activists, you notice, don't think about the plight of poor or working class minorities in this country. Notice how he really wanted to identify with the 4 privileged Harvard kids. But this guy will never talk about the plight of the working class people of minority background in this country. They don't care about it, just like bourgeois feminism doesn't care about the plight of working class women. But anyway, I hope I've shown you that, there are people in this country who are basically going to be a barrier to socialism. And it's not the Islamists who are going to be the barrier to socialism. It's these professional managerial types like this fellow who absolutely hate poor people. They're not exactly capitalists, but they want to be capitalists. And if you were to try and instill socialism, they would be more anti-socialist than the average Islamist. Yeah, I can tell you that. I know he doesn't care about working class minorities. I can tell you why. Because, instead of asking, okay, so how can we improve the standard of living of minorities in Malaysia who are suffering as a result of Bumiputra politics? That's what we socialists do, right? We also talk about how many Malays have fallen through the cracks of these policies, which have largely benefited cabled elite Malays. Now, instead of asking that question, he just has to start smugly flexing and somehow basically talking about racial supremacy, like we minorities are superior to those people. So this is a wrench in forming class consciousness, because it pushes the majority members to the right, and it alienates working class Malays that could possibly be our allies in the fight towards socialism. So let's not pretend that this is anything to do with a sense of injustice, but rather a sense of smugness and racial superiority that he had to smugly, virtue signal about how minorities are simply better than Malays. But my prediction is that when we transition into the socialist mode of production, the biggest resistance will not come from the conservative Muslim people in the rural areas. Guess who it will come from? It will come from uppity, well-to-do urbanite PMC, professional managerial types. That will be the biggest barrier towards socialism, because immediately when they see that society is progressing towards the socialist mode of production and they might lose their class privileges, they will resist harder. The people that you can revolutionize are those with nothing to lose and everything to gain. That's why I think that as socialists, we should not bother with the PMC liberal elites, the ivory tower paper tigers who sit in their comfortable office and have no idea of the workers' reality. Yes, don't worry about those people. They hate the working class. They absolutely despise the working class. And, these people have zero revolutionary potential. And no, don't expect us to debate civilly with these people either. You cannot be civil to the ruling class. You cannot be civil to a man who has his boot on your throat. But I find it really, really fitting that the most reactionary people in Malaysia, that is to say, not reactionary in an Islamic sense, but reactionary in their opposition towards a society in which everyone has a civilized standard of living, always happen to be descended of the comprador class. For example, Michelle Yeoh defended the draconian and fascist Barisan National Government. She is closer to the villains in the stories than the heroes. And guess what? Michelle Yeoh is an MCA descendant, Malaysian Chinese Association, which threw working class Chinese people into concentration camps during the British era. Now this Dizzy, if that's what his name really is a descendant of a man who was serving the British imperialists. That's what he is. So, and if you look even further, if you look at United Malays National Organization, UMNO, you will find that they cozied up to the Japanese during the Second World War, after they'd cozied up to the British in the pre-war era. Every reactionary in Malaysia, not people with false consciousness, but actual ruling class reactionaries, always seem to be descended of colonial compradors. Don't you think? Well, I just have to say, in conclusion, that socialism is unstoppable, no matter how much the reactionaries may kick and scream about it. No, we might not become a communist society in the same vein as Russia or China, but we will have socialism because it is an unstoppable force of nature that arises from the contradictions in society. And so, just like the feudalists were overthrown by the bourgeoisie, it is time for their turn to be overthrown by
the people.
Now, thank you and have a wonderful day.